Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Delve podcast. Today, we're talking about the idea of you are not failing. The system around you is failing you. I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam. I'm the executive and clinical director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Please help us by spreading the word for this podcast. Our intention here is just to add value and be helpful to as many people as possible. So it'd be very helpful. Also, please do follow us on Instagram at Delve Psych Chicago. We're posting some really good stuff on the Instagram page, and it would be great to have you part of our community over there.
Yeah, we'd really appreciate the support. So that's the call to action we're asking for these days.
Yes, please. Here at Delve Psych, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. If you are interested in a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And if you like our content here on the podcast, you will surely like our content on our Substack at delvepsych.substack.com. Check it out.
Yeah. They all fit together in one ecosphere of depthy thought.
Yes. All right. You are not failing. The system around you is failing you. All
right?
So we're talking about systems today. I think it's so easy for us to just blame ourselves for everything. And without looking at the wider systems at play. You may not be a failure. The systems around you may be failing you. I think it's just it's so true.
Yeah, and I think that there's such a motivation to for these systems to put it on you that it's hard to even spot when that's happening. I think one of the classic examples is the whole recycling thing that happens, or even energy conservation. So much pressure is put on individuals to do their part to try to limit their energy expenditure and water expenditures and to recycle, and you need to do your part for the environment. But when you look at the share of any of those resources that are being used by large corporations, if you were to get any of those companies, like any large company, let's say a big box store, to go through and install lights that were a little bit more energy efficient, that would do massively more in terms of effect size than a large number of residential individuals changing their particular habits. The energy expenditures are just unequal, and it tends to be large facilities and industrial complexes and things of that nature, data centers, that end up being the ones that are resource intensive. And yet the system is going to tend to kind of put the pressure on individuals. It's a form of blame shifting.
It's so true. I think of these people that have these private jets that are flying all over the place every single day, and I'm over here using my paper straw, and I'm like, I'm happy to use my paper straw. It's not my favorite. I don't like the texture as much. It's kind of weird, but I'll do it. But my point is that the real perpetrators here, the people that are causing the most damage to our earth, are the people that have these large footprints, these corporations, like you said. And so
yeah, it becomes an issue of scale, and scale is a thing that the human mind doesn't deal terribly well with. Beyond a certain point, we really can't kind of deeply internally understand the difference between a billion and a trillion. It just feels like a lot. And so when we start putting things in such terms, it's difficult for the mind to even really kind of conjure. But I would also say that in general, we have an issue with a thing like effect size. I'm so sorry. I need to get off on a little statistical argument here for a moment. But
buckle in. Oh.
Let me actually. So, have you ever read one of those articles that said something like, um, if you do X or Y thing, it will improve your memory or it will improve your attention? You've read an article that would sort of suggest, like, oh, if you just biphasic sleep, if you sleep for in two chunks at night rather than one continuous chunk, then maybe it'll help your attention throughout the day or your restfulness throughout the day. The articles like this. I'm not
Sure.
saying that that's one I've read, but I'm
Sure.
saying in general, an
Sure.
article like that. What those kinds of articles almost always fail to tell you is, but by how much? So let's say I eat this special grape thing that you've produced, and you're telling me that it's going to improve your attention. How much is it going to improve my attention? They never talk about that. They never talk about, is this a large effect size or not? And this is one of the biggest problems with the way that most research is done, even in clinical psychology or broader psychology today, is that they're still relying on p-values and significance testing. They call it null hypothesis significance testing. So essentially, it will say, did this have a statistically significant effect or not? And it's a bilateral categorization. So it either did or it didn't have a statistically significant effect. But there are lots of ways to achieve statistical significance that are clinically meaningless. And it's sort of it's a complicated minefield of statistical theater that is ultimately not terribly interesting. What's actually interesting is, what's the effect size? How much did X thing affect Y thing? And so you talk about something like, make sure that you turn off the lights before you leave the room. It
Yeah.
will make a difference. It might even make a statistically significant difference over a long enough period of time that you might measurably be able to notice it. But how big of a difference? And relative to other effects, how big of a difference would that make?
Not a huge difference in the scheme of
I
things.
mean, you could try it. You could spend a month in the dark and just go back to kind of candles and wicks
Mhm.
and things like that, and see how much your energy bill comes down if you're not using the overhead lights all the time. It
At
will
all.
come down, but how much?
And is it worth it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you have some nice mood lighting going on, but like I
Sure.
don't know. I think I need my overhead lights to do my work.
I
Therapy
mean,
in the dark.
I'm not recommending any particular strategy for anyone, like, choose this or choose that, do this or don't do that. It's, I think, up for each of us to kind of analyze these things for ourselves. What I critique is the system that puts the blame on the individual,
Yeah.
and very much when the system could do more to help than the individual could. That's the thing that I'm indicting. So sure, turn off your lights, conserve your water, don't take long showers, etc. And
Mhm.
can we indict the system that is putting that on you while not taking accountability for the broader structural problems that it's creating and perpetuating?
Right. 100%. I think we often forget how much our context affects where we're at. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to remember this quote that you said in didactics, and I don't know, I forget who said it. Maybe you can remind me.
Is this the Cooley quote?
This is the "I am who I am" quote. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
I am who I am in large part because of when I am and who was there.
It's not the one I was thinking of. But yes, absolutely. I completely agree. And looking at our topic list, I think that this is going to be a theme for the next couple of episodes. Because, yes, it's the people around you are shaping you, and they're shaped by the people around them, and they're shaped by the people around them. So when we start to talk about culture, I think about culture, for instance, as um, you still have to have conduits, some contact point that communicates the ideas of culture to an individual. So that could be a mother, it could be a television program, it could be an Instagram influencer, it could be a book, it could be a school system. But like somehow it has to go from out there to in here, and it has to do that by way of certain communicators somewhere along the way. And so then the mentality of those communicators is probably even more important than what the actual reality of the broader culture is. Culture isn't one thing, it's not a monolith. It's many, many things, but people's experience of what that culture is will be dependent on who told them. A really good example of this is I had the awesome experience. I've continued to have the awesome experience of working with a lot of individuals from India, Indian American or Indian internationals, and the Indian culture is amazingly diverse. There's so many languages, so many cultures within India more broadly. So many religious persuasions and nuances therein, so many kind of walks of life in India. And so I had this amazing experience of getting a bunch of different people looking at me as a white guy and telling me that like, this is what Indian culture is, explaining to me from baseline what Indian culture is. And sometimes there'd be overlaps and sometimes there would not. And sometimes you could notice little regional differences or certain differences with respect to kind of like the maybe religious persuasion or conservativeness of the particular family they came from. And so I started to get into the practice of saying, where did you learn that? Who taught you that particular idea of your culture? And have you ever heard any other ideas about your culture?
Well, that's so interesting. Yeah. Just like the way things are passed down. I mean, that's powerful, right? Because we know what we know from who told us what we know. I don't know.
Exactly. We know what we know because of the messages that we were given by the people who told us how things work. I really like the combination of the parents. So you'll have the situation where you're like, well, in our culture, it's very important to take care of your parents. Who taught you that? Well, my parents. It's like, well, they've got a vested interest. Come
Yeah,
on.
come on.
It is still a cultural thing. It's still but I just think that's an interesting one. So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I've been still sitting on this quote, that you're not a failure. The system around you is failing you. I think about, there's a school of therapy, called reality therapy, and it's really focused on like your own personal responsibility for making your choices. And where I feel like this school of thought kind of falls short is not taking into as much context the systems at play that maybe prevent us from completely being responsible for our circumstances and our ability to make certain choices because of the restrictions at play, the powers at play. And so I think that's where reality therapy falls short a little bit and gets some criticism.
Well, let's also look at, so reality therapy was Glasser in the 60s. I didn't have that off the top of my head. I was pulling that up as you were talking. So what was the context of the American culture in the 60s? We were coming out of this is the baby boomers coming of age, essentially, especially the late 60s. The baby boomers are kind of coming through. So we're post World War II, and the capitalist kind of explosion and the American dream is starting to really kind of take off, right? We're a deeply capitalistic culture and we're a deeply individualistic culture. So as we are kind of running amok with individualism and capitalism, you also ended up getting theories like this that came out of this. And I think his name is Brian Cushman, wrote this fascinating book chapter. It's one of my favorite book chapters in all of psychology I've ever read. It's in the original volume of the History of Psychotherapy, which it got an update to be way more CBT. The older version of it was a much more complex kind of view of a variety of different psychotherapies, and I thought was a better history. But there you go, rhetoric. It's the editors decide how to frame the issue. Regardless, Cushman wrote this book chapter. It's a fantastic book chapter in which he argued that the psychotherapy that is developed within any particular culture is going to reflect the values of that culture. So you get reality therapy in the 60s because of individualism and capitalism. It's going to reflect the values of the culture more broadly. But if you think about that, then also like the government and the economic structures around us are shaping how we view ourselves and how we're supposed to consider who we are. I've got so many ideas in my mind at the moment, but Cushman made the argument that the reason that psychotherapy is reflective of our values is because people are trying to figure out how to fit within this particular society. And this particular society is a momentary thing. It's a contextual thing. So therapies develop to help you fit into a structure itself. If you look at the Victorian era, the Victorian era was far more focused on like sexual and religious purity. And so you get Freudian psychosexual theory. It's far more targeted to these kind of moralistic, maybe sexual deviations and the broader idea of appropriacy versus individual responsibility, which is way more tied to capitalism and individualism.
Right. And I think more theories based on like systems theory, like feminist theory are more modern.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so now we've had something of a burgeoning of identity-laden theories. But again, that's because we're kind of in an identity era. We've had a burgeoning of a systemic kind of view because we're in a much more kind of systemic-y reflective era. And so like you really can look at the context of a situation to understand how the people within it are understanding the situation. And that will then affect downstream how people end up making certain choices. On top of that, you'll get people trying to fit into those systems, and then you'll get psychotherapies trying to help people fit within those structures. They all fit together.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, how what's the popular psychology approach of the time is reflective of like just the culture of the time and what values that culture holds at the time. Because yeah, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to fit in.
We're trying to fit in, and nothing really changes until you end up getting certain kind of friction points. So for another project that I'm working on, I've been doing kind of a deeper dive on certain aspects of history, and I don't understand this stuff terribly deeply. I'm not a historian. I kind of sometimes wish I was, but I love it. And you can sort of see how one thing leads to another if you really start to kind of pull at the threads a bit. A lot of the ideas of individualism really did kind of come out of the Protestant Reformation. And a lot of those came out of the University of Paris way back in the day where Martin Luther was learning. They were kind of starting to teach people to think in ways that were different than the Catholic Church. But why was there that kind of tension with the Catholic Church back then? It was largely because of the frictions with the Papal States and them getting rather political and rather warmongery and rather sort of, they were starting to sell what's the term? I can't remember what it was, the term for specifically what it was that they were selling, but essentially they would sell the like a decreased amount of time in purgatory as a means of trying to kind of save maybe your loved ones or yourself. People were handing over fortunes, or peasants were spending their entire life savings buying this kind of salvation. as much as they could. That, like, that friction, that economic friction, and those power structures frictions, it's ultimately what's going to lead people to take the ideas that are already lying around and turn them into something new. I really like this quote that change is built out of the ideas that are lying around at the moment that the structure is ready for change.
Oh, I like that quote too. And Adam, you do know a lot about history.
I mean, anybody who knows the Protestant Reformation is yelling at me right now, because that's one of the basic terms of, hold on, indulgences. Is that what it was
Okay.
called? Yeah, indulgences. Yes. Yeah. Anybody that's part of what drives me nuts, is that, like, certain people will know certain bits of history. And so if you step into their territory as a dilettante like myself, they're like, you don't know anything. I'm like, well, I know a little.
You know way more than me. As you were going and go, I was like, wow. I don't know anything about that. But like, yeah. No, go ahead.
But let's say that we are a person in that era prior to the Protestant Reformation, who's trying to figure out how to be right in the world. Your framing is already Catholic, because that's what exists in Western Europe at that time. So the context that you're in is already suggesting that there's something that you need to do to be better. Better in this case is to avoid purgatory. And things tended to be much more framed in terms of the sacraments and the proper following of the sacraments, etc. At that time, some degree still Catholicism is that way. Regardless, all of that is to say, I need to do something to be right. And so then the actions that I take are born out of my understanding of the context that was given to me, rather than some self-generated thought. So I need to spend this money because the Catholic Church has told me that this is the way to behave. So you take that same idea, the context told me what I need to do, and now I'm feeling bad and taking certain actions to try to live up to those expectations and follow those procedures. That's exactly what's happening in contemporary capitalism, where people have told you that you're supposed to be productive. You're supposed to make sure that you are eating all of your vegetables and going to the gym 3 times a week and look a particular way and have this certain kind of savings and make sure that you have a house of this type and a car of this type and your relationship should look this way. And there's all of this structure around you telling you that this is the way that you're supposed to live your life.
Yeah.
And then you're feeling guilty that you're not. I'm so, like, I feel such guilt that I don't get up on Saturday morning after a hard work week at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to yoga, right? It's like, who taught you that?
Yeah. Who told you were a failure because of that? Well,
And who exhausted you such that that's even difficult to do in the first place?
yeah. No, I mean, I hear clients all the time say like, oh, like I feel so bad about myself. Like I wasn't productive today. It's a thing I hear
Oh,
all the time.
oh, I just want to give them all a hug every time they say that.
And it's like, who told you needed to be productive and feel bad about yourself if you weren't? Well, this is
Produce for what? Yeah,
for what?
Produce for who?
So you're a failure to who and to what? The system that wants your output so that the people on top make more money, essentially.
Yeah. Have I ranted about the nation of Bhutan on here yet?
Oh, you might have, but
I
remind
think
me.
we did, yeah. So Bhutan did away with, for the longest time, they did away with reporting gross domestic product. They refused to publish gross domestic product. Instead, they would publish what they called their scale of gross domestic happiness, which I think I quipped then and will still quip now. How'd you measure that, bro? But but still, you get the idea where they're sort of saying, like, we're not playing this game. We're not interested.
Right. Exactly. Kind of going back to the quote that I talked about. You know, you are who you are in large part because of when you are and who is there. And I was thinking particularly about when you are, And I was thinking about my grandparents on my mother's side, growing up during the Great Depression, and thinking about like if they were to really beat themselves up about, you know, their lack of monetary success, or, you know, not, you know, hitting their goals by a certain time. It's like you are surviving. Like
Yeah.
you grew up in a time where, I mean, your parents were just trying to put like food on the table, so that you could survive and get by. Like the I don't know, just thinking about them thinking of themselves as like, oh, I'm such a failure. It's like you went through that. You got through. I think you're fine. Like you're not a failure. Um, you know.
Yeah. Well, and Alain Dubuton likes to kind of point out that there's even that language that we use of a failure. You know, in the Roman era, they didn't call people who didn't have money failures. Failing is this very capitalistic, like the strong will survive kind of mentality. In the Roman era, they were called unfortunates. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
your circumstances are less fortunate, not you fucked up.
you failed. Yeah, it's a very again, it puts the onus on you. It attacks you, and yeah, puts the blame on you. So I think it, that's an interesting, yeah, reframe. Even the just language of being a failure as a human is very capitalistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the flip side of this, because one could hear this episode so far and say, well, you're just giving everybody a pass and nobody has any responsibility to do anything about anything, and we should all just blame others and give up, right? No. I've also really enjoyed this quote recently. It's not your fault, but it is your problem.
Hmm. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. So yes, that you still have like room to try to do something about it,
Right.
even if it's not your fault.
The
Um,
context is what it is. The circumstance is what it is. That sucks. Do something.
yeah, and do the best that you can with what you have, right?
Right. But think critically about what it is that you are trying to accomplish in your life, and make sure that you are guided by your own light, not the one that was given to you, because you might not like its color.
Ooh, say that again.
Wish me luck. Make sure that you are guided by your own light, not the one that was given to you, because you might not like its color.
How do we know whether it's my own light or a light that was given to me?
Well, all right. So that's really interesting, and actually, again, ties into some topics we might get further into in future episodes. But I think you begin to dabble. I think you set down like your best understanding of the things that you mean to set out for your life, and you act as if they are your goals. You act as if they are your values. You act as if they are your needs. If you're not quite sure, then you kind of put it on the page and try it out. That act of dabbling is going to do a couple of things. So when we talk about the goals, the needs, and the values, you will only ever end up with big emotionality, typically when there's some tension between what you're doing and what you mean to be doing. So if you're in kind of syntonicity, if everything is syntonic, then you're just going to keep going. And so whatever you put on the page and acted as if it was true, whatever you put on the page is going to work fine. And so it'll hold because it kind of feels all right until you end up with one of those kind of Protestant Reformation style frictions with the system. Eventually a friction will show up and that's going to feel like something. So multiple steps. You put it on the page, you try it out. If it flows, you're good. There you are. You're right. That was a need. That was a value, etc. If it starts to feel like some degree of tension, that doesn't mean it's bad. It means you stop and use your big ass brain to make choices. What does this mean that this feels bad? I'll give you an example. Um, playing improv. I had this is going to sound like a brag, and then it's going to turn into not a brag at all. I had the wonderful occasion early in my experience as an improviser of playing an absolutely packed house at the Second City. It's one of the biggest stages that I've ever played. I bombed hard the whole way through. It was one of the worst shows I've ever played in my little improv experience. It was just not good. I just don't think I was ready or developed enough, certainly wasn't confident enough. And I remember having a hard time sleeping that night because I was just sort of like, I was just encountering the shame of that, the embarrassment of that. A bunch of people just witnessed me fail.
Yeah.
No ambiguity on that. I'm quite sure. So there's friction, right? This thing that I seem to really enjoy and I'm trying really hard at suddenly feels really bad. The simple thought would be, okay, well then quit. Because there's the shame. You don't want to feel the shame, so don't feel the shame, so quit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to say, I think this shame is temporary. And I also think it's something I can interact with and something that I can build some strength around. And I think I went out maybe the next day or the day after that or the day after that, something like that, to another open stage. And I'm fairly sure I bombed again. But what's the relationship with shame? You start to sort of just realize like the shame is not going to dictate my choices. I will go and fail in front of you all. And I'll maybe even develop a bit of a badge of pride about doing that. Like, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to be a moron, and you get to witness that, and then I'm going to leave. And that's not going to affect my willingness to do it.
Yeah.
And in that way, I think you can say the friction tells me that I've got a choice to make. It doesn't tell me what choice to make.
Mm. Yeah, even though you were feeling all of this shame, the improv was important to you. There's something deep down that you knew this was in alignment with your goals and your values and your needs. And so you didn't let the shame just drive the bus.
Yeah.
It was
I had a
there.
bad Yeah, absolutely. I had a bad scene the other day too, and it was in a little bit more of a teaching context. And so somebody was asking me, like, "So why didn't that scene work?" And I was much more able now, many years later, to just sort of be like, I just needed to make this choice. I'll make that choice better next time. It's fine. You develop more of a kind of a deeper willingness to fail and a much more kind of blasé experience with shame. You're like, that shows up sometimes. It'll go away.
Right. And I'm doing this thing because it's important to me. There's like this idea in act of like willingness to face pain or discomfort based on something that's really important to you.
Values driven action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is quite difficult, decoupling our choices from our feelings, because the feelings do not need to choose our actions for us. And in fact, when our feelings choose our actions for us, they're usually going to run from unpleasant emotions or cling to pleasant emotions, trying to kind of grasp to them and keep them. Doesn't work. Neither of those things work long term.
Yeah. Yeah. This is such a good conversation. I think we strayed a little bit from the original quote, but good stuff. Any last thoughts on this idea of you are not failing, the system around you is failing you?
You are context.
Yeah. Powerful. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, new quote. And Adam still does not have his whiteboard up, so I'm just gonna read it. I'm so okay. Blah, blah, blah. I'm so sorry I wrote you a long letter, but I hadn't the time to write you a short one. This is
It's a
so
classic.
interesting. So
It's a
interesting.
classic Mark Twain quote.
Oh, it's Mark Twain. Okay, yeah, you did mention that
Yeah.
earlier. Okay, interesting. Do you know what book it's from? Or
I don't.
okay. I'm so sorry. I wrote you a long letter, but I hadn't the time to write you a short one. Yeah, because it's like it makes you a little puzzled because it's like, well, a long letter would take more time. So what do you mean you hadn't the time to write a short one? But I wonder, like, I'm gonna try to figure this one out. Bear with me. So, in writing a short letter, if you have all of these things to say, and you just kind of let yourself free write, stream of consciousness, free write, get all of the things that you mean to say out. I suppose it would take more time to try to edit that down to a shorter letter.
Absolutely.
That's my thought.
Conciseness and cogency delivered in compact form is just so incredibly difficult. And in that way, I think that the development of many creative projects is really kind of, it comes out of the editing process and the willingness to kind of continue to edit. The longer that I've gone along, because I'm not good at this, but like with creative projects, I get very excited when I'm near the end, but the end is just the beginning of the editing process. The end of kind of producing the thing is really just the beginning of the editing process. And you really have to kind of learn to love the editing process and learn to love the listen and re-listen and redo and re-record and go back, and that impulse to say, it's good enough. No, it isn't. Not if you're really trying to polish, right? And so I think it does depend on what the creative project is, and what level of carefulness you're kind of aiming for. But for like a truly polished product, really it does take a lot of time and effort and energy to create something that is compact, clear, and cogent.
Well, I think too about people that like tend to be really perfectionistic about their writing and try to edit while they're writing that first draft, and how much longer that takes and how much that stifles creativity and sort of a disservice. I don't know. So yeah, like trying to edit along while you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I think so much too about the defeat in the moment that I realize that I have to redo something or I have to scrap something. You put a lot of work into it and you're like, that's not going to work and I can't use it. The just sheer and utter defeat that I feel in the moment that I have to give up on something, followed by the clear and obvious like improvement at having done so. I've developed a little bit more of a muscle memory for, with some of these more crafted projects, just being when I am feeling that defeat, again, saying that friction of emotion isn't going to dictate my actions. And just because I like this section and I want to keep it and I'm sure that it's going to be good, doesn't mean it actually is. And I try to remember that this defeat that I'm feeling now is almost always followed by a better product that I feel more confident in. And so maybe I can just live with the defeat.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Delve Podcast. Please do follow us on Instagram at Delve Psych Chicago and follow our blog on Substack at delvepsych.substack.com. Do check out our website for a free consultation call at delvepsych.com. And until next time.
Until then.
Bye. Bye.